You don't want to have to keep guessing what your business is thinking. I'm going to tackle top hobby syndrome today. I think I know how. And I'll start by saying you're special. I believe in creation, so I believe that we are all wonderfully created by God. But even if you don't believe in creation, you would not agree with the statement that there is someone else just like you. There is something internal that says, I am inherently different than everyone else on the face of the earth. You might point to fingerprints, you might point to ideas, you might point to upbringing. You might say that even if I was born the same, I was raised different, and that in itself makes me different. Okay? What we all will agree upon is that we are all different, and that can be phrased as we are all special. Cool? All right. Now, when people come into the reselling space, they come with baggage. And baggage looks like this. They either tell people what they do, and they are met with the response of, what is it again? And every Christmas is the same question, what do you do again? Can you really make money doing that? And the reseller gets frustrated because they go, I've explained it, it's not that hard to understand. And it's not. But the confusion is not that they don't understand it, it's that they don't understand how it can continue working ongoing. How do you sustain this selling of junk to feed a family? How do you put aside money for your retirement selling people's crap? Alright, that's the first response. The second version of baggage is, oh yeah, that's really cool, I did it before. Yeah, I've done it before. Yeah. And it wasn't worth my time. That's what the reseller hears. So there's two things they hear. The first thing is, I don't know how long you can keep this up for. And the second one is, it's not worth my time, and it probably isn't worth yours. If you put enough of these people in a room, there ends up being this need for validation that sticks its head out, which is, I am the one that will last. I am the one that will show you that it's worth my time. And it can be a healthy motivator, except when people choose to allow it to not be. When I went back to Malaysia, we had lots of conversations around business in Australia versus business in Malaysia versus business in China versus business in the States. For those of you who don't know, my dad was a banker, and I grew up with lots of friends whose parents were in business. And every time I go back home, I take the opportunity to have conversations around business, because if there's anything I've learned, it's that context shapes our perception of our own endeavors. And if you want to know how well your business is doing, don't compare the people in your industry, compare to businesses as a whole. Because the only way that you can know that your business is worth doing is if it is a contributing member of society. Okay? I know that's something that we say of people, but when we make businesses, we're essentially making a separate entity from our person that hopefully fulfills a role in society that is more value adding than, I guess, value taking. And so when we compare the way businesses are run in different countries, the thing that inevitably comes up is this concept of top poppy syndrome. It's a very Australian thing. And it's weird that when you tell it to someone in an Asian country, they look at you and they go, why? They don't get it. And the reason why they don't get it is because when we were driving through these small towns, we would see warehouses, truck yards, just activity. So much activity relative to the people that were there, or at least that's what it felt like. It felt as if there was no economy in Australia. Here, things are so spread apart. People live far away. There's a slower pace to life. We clock off in a timely manner. In Asian countries, people work sometimes till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and they start earlier as well. And whilst we might be quick to say, well, that's not a good standard of living, there is no right and wrong. There's just trade-offs. If the moment we get into business, we understand that there's just trade-offs. And this is the trade-off. In a super competitive environment, there isn't the luxury to tear people down. We seem to have carved ourselves this standard of living, but also allowed ourselves this toxic trait, being that we have the luxury to tear others down in order to feel better about ourselves. When you ask somebody in an Asian culture if that's a thing that would work as a strategy, like forget about personality, forget about the right and wrong, good or bad, social perception, just say this is a strategy to help you get ahead. What do you think about it? They will inevitably, and they have said this, "Bingo ya kam tahan," which in Cantonese just means who has that kind of time. But the reason we speak different languages, and one of the things I love about Malaysia is that in a sentence you'll have different words for different things, and we'll choose the word and the dialect or language that best conveys the sentiments of that word. So like an example would be jela I'm sick of eating this food. It's giving me a gag response. I don't want to see it anymore, right? That's a lot of words to convey a feeling. When in Malay we have a word called jela, which just means like I just don't want to eat it anymore. Or zai, which is like in Cantonese just means I'm stuffed to the point where food has no value to me. Two different sentiments, but essentially you're trying to say I don't want any more food. And so in Malaysia growing up, the choice of words to convey a sentiment, and bingo ya kam tahan, when presented with the strategy of tall poppy syndrome, they just go, it's that when a child says, "Mommy, can you help me tie my shoelaces?" They just go, "No, I have my own laces to tie, and your other sisters, and your other brothers, and I gotta make your lunches. Go do it yourself." You know what I mean? Bingo ya kam tahan. Because the strategy that works in competitive environments is that you just do your best to get ahead. You don't have the luxury of tearing other people down, and the bang for buck for tearing people down is not there. It just doesn't exist in these environments. And if you do that, people are quick to cast you aside. You're not a productive member of society, and they will gravitate closer to those who are more productive members of society, because when people decide that they need to tear down to view themselves as having more, the resources that are available haven't changed. As a strategy, you want to be around people who don't tear other people down, because they are people who are working at increasing their resource that is available for deploy. And so when I look at that, I go, okay, how do I increase competition? How do I make myself feel like I need to work harder to get ahead rather than have the luxury of tearing other people down? Two things. The first one that you can do is to surround yourself with people who are more successful than you. Objectively, not subjectively, right? Not perceived to be more successful, actually are more successful. Be willing to talk about numbers and be willing to share your numbers so that you can benchmark against other people. That's the first one. And then go one step further and benchmark both against industry standards. So here's an example, right? Six-figure reseller is a title that we throw around a lot and mostly made popular by YouTubers. And quite naturally, when these titles get thrown around, the comment sections tend to flare up. Like, is it profit or is it revenue or is it... Okay, fair. Why? Because the guy who mows your lawn probably turns over 6 figures a year as well. The moment you do that comparison, you suddenly realize a six-figure reseller is nothing special. It's just a money-making thing, but not a lot of money. And you can judge that also by the hesitancy to talk about profit, because in a product-based business, of course the profit is going to be significantly lower than a service-based business. The year that I transitioned from a finance broker to an eBay seller, my revenue went up by almost 60%. My profit went down by about half, because that's the cost of buying product to make a profit, as opposed to just running a purely service-based business. In order to remove all doubt and to remove, because the moment you become a six-figure reseller yourself, you feel shaky again. You're like, oh, actually, no, this doesn't feel secure. All right. So therefore, we go for the next one. Let's become $1 million resellers, because then when you take that $1 million reseller title and you benchmark it against other businesses, most businesses that turn over $1 million generally have staff, unless you're selling, unless you're a real estate agent and you're selling $10 million houses. There's a very small number of businesses that turn over $1 million a year that don't have staff. Most of them generally have an assistant. They have, admin people. They have document processing, order fulfilling staff, because at that level, usually the activity requires that. And at that point, there's a bit more security, a feeling of stability, of like, yeah, this thing will last. Remember that first point about baggage? The moment you become that $1 million business in terms of just top line, people start to stop questioning is it profit, is it after tax, before tax? No one gives a shit anymore, because at that point, there's a general consensus that the first question is sorted. You will continue to last. And then it becomes, then the second question needs to be answered, which is it worth your time? The moment you're at $1 million business, you're gonna meet even less people who will say things like, I've done that before, but it wasn't worth my time. And the people who will understand you are people who are probably also in the same league as you and ahead. And that's a good thing, because now you're starting to meet people that you can benchmark against who are actually more business focused. And business, it's just a boring thing at that point. It's just let's just grow it because we know how, and because our focus is no longer the bolo, it's no longer the clout of being able to work from home. It's can I hire more people? Can I build culture? Can I create revenue streams that traditionally were not there? Can I start a new brand altogether? Reselling, in terms of the rank of businesses, is very much a testing ground. Whenever I meet businesses that are in that 1 million, 2 million revenue range, they are very quick to tell me that eBay was where they started, but it's not their biggest channel. And I know it's quite hard to fathom, but there's a process to get there, and tall poppy syndrome doesn't fit in any of it. It actually slows you down, because there's a deploying of resources to preserve that time, to tear people down to feel better, and all that resource is wasted for not growing. So all this to say, simply put, if you wish to not be comparing yourself to feel better in the tall poppy syndrome sort of way, recognize that when you start reselling as a side hustle, you bring that baggage with you into a community that is full of the same baggage, and that is the frame through which a lot of that conversation happens. Gravitate towards people who sound boring, because boring people, for the most part, have their business fundamentals down pat. You'll need them down the line. Don't gravitate to the people who boast. Don't gravitate to the people who are just keen to share with you the one item that they sold for $100 that they picked up for $1 or got it for free. Gravitate to the people who view their reselling businesses as these boring things that they just want to keep growing. Because you'll find there it's a lot more calm, it's a lot more peaceful, and that's kind of what I've learned being in my Discord community with Paul, Matilda, Bronwyn, Jane, Leah, names come to mind, Lachlan, Gary, Brendan, Are we doing shout-outs? I'm so sorry for people. Amanda, like Alex. That's what I've loved about being in our Discord community. The fact that we're like, there's the yay, I found something, but it's not. There is no tall poppy in our community. There is no tearing people down. It's just boring, and it's good because boring is stable and boring is reliable. Boring is. It reminds me of when I first started going out with Jenny, and my mum asked me, "What do I think of Jenny?" And I go, I don't know. I feel like she's a bit sick. Cantonese, we use the word sick. It's like just straight shooter, but it also just means, it also kind of can mean boring. But if you say boring in English, it's a negative word. So tick, it's like just straight, right? And my mum just blasted me. This was after 3 weeks of knowing Jen. She knows the story and she likes that my mum did this. But if my mum kind of went, "What do you think relationships are about? Do you think it's romantic all the time? Do you think you go for dance classes all the time?" Like, no, we do dance classes because you guys are grown up now. But back when you were younger, before we first started, it's boring, it's reliable, it's stable. That's what you want. You don't want to keep guessing what the other person is thinking. And when you think about your business as a separate entity from yourself, you don't want to have to keep guessing what your business is thinking. And that's why boring is good. Boring is nice. So let's celebrate boring. I've already mentioned you are inherently special. There is no need for validation there. No need. You might want it, you might feel good in the moment, but you don't need it. You are already unique. And you've started a business because of something unique that you've noticed that you can implement. Something as amazing as Elon Musk's vision for space, or something as unique as a special way to write a thank you card because your handwriting resonates more so than others. It's special to you. You've started there. Now recognize that it needs to become more and more boring so that all that baggage starts to fade away. And just to make things that much clearer, I want you to think back to when you were in high school and you were thinking about doing a career. You were asked, "What do you want to do for a living?" You would have said, "I want to be a doctor, maybe I want to be a nurse, maybe I want to be a lawyer, maybe I want to be an engineer, I might go study a trade." It was based on tiny sparks of interest. It wasn't based on an internal conviction of, "I know." There are very few people who will say, at the age of 4, parents say, at the age of 4, I knew he was going to be a doctor because he said so and he's never changed his mind. Okay. There's also an argument to be made of, there are parents who do support those things and build support systems around their children's indications of good things. So for example, if a child at 4 says, "I want to be a doctor," I would assume, at least in the Asian circle, the parents are going to be like, yeah, that's good. Okay, let's build on that. I don't have to plant the seed anymore. That's an internal seed. We're just going to grow the tree. But all this to say, when you articulate it, it comes from a place of there's sparks of interest. It's not internal. But eventually, you study, you develop an interest, you come out and start working. People ask you how you like it. You must say, "Yeah, I know, that's what I like. I guess so." And then people might say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" You might say, "Oh, I'm a lawyer." But you're waiting for them to go, "Oh, cool, that's really nice. Yeah, you must have this, you must have that. Maybe you must enjoy going to work. Do you like dealing with clients?" There's a dialogue there that you're looking for that validation of your choice of career. But if you talk to someone who is 60 years old doing this on the verge of retirement, there is no need for that validation anymore. It's just, this is what I do, and that's it. Move on to assess whether I'm a contributing member of society. Have I loved my family in the process? Have I provided a roof over their head? There's a shift towards boring and reliable. So that pattern applies to all things, not just reselling. But what we're really doing is we're taking a direction towards stable. We're taking a direction towards useful. And we're taking a direction towards positive contribution in a holistic sort of way. So that's my take. And I hope you found this helpful.